Um, what do you call yourself?
When I'm working with the Trail and Burning Man, Kellyfish.
Okay,
Otherwise, I'm just Kelly, but
cool.
I'm Kellyfish right now.
And Kelly, where do you live?
I live in Shasta County, California right now, between Dunsmuir and the Trail.
And what do you run as a business, or what's your connection to the Pacific Crest Trail?
I am running the Crossroads. It's a small hostel run out of my house with indoor and outdoor spaces. It's a safe haven for many, many hikers to rest and relax and recover.
Okay. And what are you passionate about?
Personally, number one would be swimming. Uh, Up there is sailing and scuba diving and all kinds of things water related. And,
Have you always been a swimmer,
yes,
like in the ocean or lakes, or?
anywhere.
Okay.
I learned to swim when I was 6 months old, and yeah,
And ever since, you're a swimmer.
yes.
Okay. And what do you think about the Pacific Crest Trail?
Uh, it's um, it's more than a trail. It's not just a trail for sure. It's a whole culture and a community, and that's what I've spent my life doing is dancing in these alternative communities throughout, what's woven into my life in many ways. But being on the West Coast, it's easy to find those, and
Okay.
yeah,
And could you share a story, maybe related to the Pacific Crest Trail, related to Crossroads or this place?
sure. I think I mean there's so many stories.
You can tell like 40 too if you want to. Or just one,
Ah.
whatever you want.
And that's one of the things I'm passionate about is sharing stories. My
Okay.
grandmother was a world traveler, and we would sit in her chairs in the morning and have coffee, and she would tell me stories of her life, and so I really see how that has woven into my own life. In the just passion for hearing people's stories and sharing stories, because I come into contact with people who live very unusual, amazing lives, who dance in these alternative subcultures that have many commonalities, such as living these like lives where we're just trusting that the things are going to come next that we need, or we're going to, living minimally, living on the faith of humanity, really, is kind of what it boils down to, and that there are going to be wonderful people that show up, and people from all over the world, and yeah. So a story from here. Um, I think probably the way this place started is kind of a good one. I mean, there's many stories of individual people and the magic and the synchronicity and the ways people come together and the interesting things that happen along the way. But this one was pretty profound. So my boyfriend and I had planned to do this together. He had through hiked the AT and worked on trail maintenance up in the wilderness north of here. So he was really familiar with trail culture, and I was to my own degree from living here for 20 years and driving hikers back and forth and doing trail magic and inviting people home. And so we had pondered this idea to do with this property for a while. And then 4 years ago, he passed away. And I resisted doing this after he died. I was just like, that died with him. I'm not doing this. And the first summer, I just traveled a lot and left because I couldn't stand to be here. And then the second summer, I started doing a lot of trail magic. And that was just part of my grief process and being connected to him and being connected to the trail culture and being held by this community in really beautiful ways. And that summer it got pretty busy because I started bringing more people home with me, letting them camp in my yard to fund the trail magic. They would camp for donations and I'd give rides for donations, and then that money would just go right back into trail magic. And I did a cooler at the trail every day, and sometimes we'd go down and cook food. And then there was this older gentleman named Legend, who had hiked I think he had hiked both the AT and the PCT. And at this point, that was 3 years ago, he was driving a truck, a crazy big truck with like a camper shell on top. And I mean, more than just a camper shell, like other things built up and then the camper shell really high up. And he was living out of that, and he was driving hikers around and cooking meals and visiting hostels and just being involved with the trail in a new way. And he got wind of my place and showed up here, and we had a big group dinner, a big spaghetti feed and salad, and with the hikers who were all at my house, and it was a pretty good number at that point. Maybe 10 or 12 were here, and then he started telling me about, I've gone to all these hostels. I've handwritten this little guide about how to start hostels. You should make a hostel here. I had no idea that was kind of the dream that I was fighting to not happen. And so I was, my curiosity was piqued. There were a few other little magical things. Like there was this route I had planned through Nicaragua that I wanted to do, and he had the map of that route drawn in Sharpie on his backpack. Like there were just some strange things that kind of occurred during this time, and so I'm always curious when all these things line up, and I kind of follow those breadcrumbs of synchronicity in my life. And so I invited him back. I said, well, let's do a breakfast for this crew in the morning. I really like this crew. And so we came back the next day, and then it turned into a few hours later. And then he said, you know what? I think we should have a meeting. You're going to have a hostel here, and we should have a meeting for kind of create a board of directors and start your hostel right now. And I'm like, this is really funny. No, but all right, well, I'll roll with it. There's been enough interesting, weird synchronicities, not weird, magical synchronicities that have happened during this little phase. And so he calls this meeting at the table. All right, all the hikers who want to be involved, come sit down and let's do this. And so, and I had been really busy just working with the hikers for probably 2 weeks at this point, and had no idea the date. And went to get my, just calendar and check the date. And I'm going to take notes because we're doing an official meeting. This feels funny, I'll make it official. And I look at the date and I'm like, oh my gosh, it would have been my boyfriend Jameson's birthday. And then I just I was like, okay, I have to weep for a minute. All right, this is it's another one of those things. It's not weird, it's not strange, it's not random. It's those little magical moments that we get when we are aware of them, and we step out of these 9 to 5 kind of trying to control time and space and the things that happen. When we step outside of that, it makes a lot more room for these kind of things to line up, and for us to take the moment to acknowledge them and see okay, this is not random, that this is and a huge success for me that I wasn't pining over that this was the date and I wasn't even paying attention. Although I had urges that morning to go get photos of my dead boyfriend to show the hikers at the house, which I thought was super bizarre. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get a picture and show you guys. Now I get it. Now I get where that was coming from.
Right on.
And so we had this meeting, and I took all these notes, and then Legend went in and made photocopies on my printer of this little handwritten book he had made of how to start a hostel, basically. Right. And his vision was starting a hostel in Nicaragua for his aging friends, so they all had a place to live together and have a good quality of life for a lower amount of money. And at any rate, and so the group of guys that were there with me, were all guys I think that day, were just a fantastic group. And we have bikes on the front porch. We have a really funny hodgepodge, some Burning Man bikes, and we all got on the bikes and we rode around the neighborhood together, and we were this funny bike gang, and I just felt so cared for and loved and supported by these men who had come into my life as complete strangers and happened to arrive on a day that was full of a lot of emotion for me. And we went into the tunnel under the freeway where the water runs through, and we sang songs together, and just had this just really wild, magical day that really deeply supported me. And then, okay, so I'm going to add another story on this one, because this jump, fast forward to this year, now I'm operating at my what I'm calling my full expansion, because now I've realized it's really not sustainable on my body to do this solo, and so I'm going to shrink back down after this summer so I can really focus on taking care of myself, because the big realization I've had is that I really wanted to do this with my boyfriend and not by myself, which was part of the resistance, I think, to the whole thing. So fast forward to this year, I was aware of the date this time, as I'm operating a little more on the up and up and have to like kind of stay on top of things. And so I actually wondered when I woke up. I was like, I wonder what little magical thing will happen today. And so there was a young man, an Israeli man, who was staying with me, a hiker. And we had a drive up to Shasta the day before together with just me and him in the car. And he had asked me some questions about how this started. And, you know, I told him a little bit about my boyfriend and that he had died and, you know, just a little background. And that was it. I let him out in town. I came back. He got here late. And, you know, the next morning it was... we were trying to go somewhere. We were trying to get all the hikers out and back on the trail, and we were actually, you know, the work crew, I think we were all going to go and leave and go somewhere together. And it was just really slow getting everybody out. And I was like, one of my helpers was going to drive him, and then the timing wasn't working. And then I'm like, he's eating now. No, we're never going to get out of here. And then finally I'm like, I'm just going to take him. It's going to be faster. Everybody get ready. When I swing back, we're just going to load in my car and go. And so I drove him to the trail, and in that, whatever it takes, 4 minutes to drive to the trail, he pulls out this sticker in Hebrew, and he said, I want you to know your story really touched me yesterday. And I lost my girlfriend in a car wreck 2 years ago. And I have this sticker that I've got with me, and it's in Hebrew, but it says, be the change you want to see in the world. Drive differently, and rest in peace in his girlfriend's name. And then we stopped at the trail, and we just had this beautiful exchange of this just, you know, this kind of teary-eyed edge of like, I get you. I know what you're going through. And it was just a really profound reminder for me to keep sharing my stories and keep encouraging people to share their stories, because you never know what vein you're touching in someone else, or what reminder you're giving someone else, or the place in your own heart that's healing by sharing these things and going beyond the weather and the next water cache and, you know, all those things that happen when we live in these kind of ways together and live in these kind of cultures together.
Oh, that's awesome, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And then, oh, that's awesome.